Hello, guys of United Rock Nations. We are an amazing company with Ayron Jones. How are you?
I'm doing really good, man. Doing really good.
So, of course, we are here to talk about Child of the State, the new album, of course. It is your third album. Last year was a very difficult year in the USA with racist acts, the pandemic, the chaotic end of the presidential mandate. What was
Yeah.
your state of mind when you wrote this new record?
Um, it was a culmination of things, I mean, in time periods where the you're forced in to be more internalized. I think that's kind of what we all went through when you think about the pandemic. We were all forced into the situation where we had to sit and oftentimes alone and to ourselves, or with very few other people, and you internalize. You think about what you've been through and who you are as a person, and you kind of just become, like, I call it a psychic astronaut, right? You really explore your mind and think about what you've been through. I think this album is a culmination of all that, and as I'm writing this record, I'm thinking about my relationships. I'm thinking about, the abandonment. I'm thinking about how, the person I am today came to be who I am, and so I think this record really reflects different time periods in my life at any given moment, for sure.
Absolutely. So I imagine that all these events impacted the lyrics you
Yeah.
wrote for this new album. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so there are definitely some of the events of this past year definitely affected some of the lyrics, and then some of them are just from personal experiences that I just haven't had a chance to talk about yet. But when I think about songs that like directly have to do with this moment, I certainly think about my latest single, which is Mercy, and so in that song, that for me, Mercy epitomized. I mean, in it all, I mean, is reflective of what was going on now, but Mercy epitomized what I was really feeling in that time period, which is like so much frustration and hurt. At times it was anger, but it was just all these like really raw emotions kind of put into a song, And I've been talking about this today about how it's rough, when you wake up every single day as a black person, in my skin color, and you open up the news or you look at your phone and you see every single day you see people that look like you and put in these awful situations, and where they have been killed or mistreated or whatever. You just see it. It's every single day, and it's like when you can't escape that feeling, it's what are you supposed to do? You know what I mean? So for me, that's what Mercy was about. I mean, that really song really epitomized it. I mean, the other songs, they do a good job of that too. I mean, certainly it can be said that Baptized in Muddy Waters, for instance, is a song about transformation and rebirth. Free is about perseverance and all of some of the positive things that come with going through a time period like this. But Mercy was the song that really captured the emotions the most.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. In your teenage years, you were raised by an aunt who gave you the taste of gospel and soul. Um, but today, you're more into rock than
Mm.
soul in your music. When did you start to get interested in rock?
I think it was simultaneously, to be honest with you. I think it was simultaneously. I definitely found a lane and a vein to learn guitar and blues and soul and gospel. But it was impossible to grow up in Seattle during that time period and not be influenced by rock somehow. I mean, you're living through, some of the biggest bands in the world at the time. Nirvana,
Soundgarden.
who's now. I mean, it's what's interesting is we don't even to this day we don't even really know how big Nirvana is. You know what I mean? Like they're so big you can't even really put it into words.
Absolutely.
And you're living through a time period where it's happening. The moment in history is happening. I mean, there's no way. I'm here in Seattle during Pearl Jam's rise and Nirvana's rise, and Mudhoney got a deal. Soundgarden was coming out. Alice in Chains. These bands are just so huge, and they're a part of my community. So it was impossible that I didn't get the rock thing. I think it's just kind of always been with me. But the conscious decision to play rock, I think came in it would be about 2015 for me, 14 to 15. I mean, you got to remember, even just opening. Initially, we were opening for blues bands at the very beginning. The first real big act I opened for was Robert Cray. I was back
Yes.
in like 2009, 2010. That was the first ever big thing I did with anybody, and I was here in Aberdeen. But when you really look at the whole bigger picture, I mean, the rock band thing kind of has just always been there. I mean, open. I mean, we shared stages at that time. Shortly after that, with Offspring And we had worked with some of these big rock acts. I don't know if it was ever a moment for me, honestly.
Okay, it's a great. In fact, in Seattle, it was a great time with Soundgarden, Nirvana.
Oof.
It's a great time.
It's hard to even explain to people what that's like to live in the city and go through that as a kid. You know what I mean? Like when you're just a child and you're just like seeing all these things happen at one time. It's impossible, man. People, I can't even really explain it to people.
So let's talk about your writing process. I have
Yeah.
two questions about that. The first one is how do you write the music, rather on acoustic guitar, on electric guitar? So tell us more about that. And the second question is how do you get inspiration when you pick the guitar and write songs?
So for me, the I would say for the first half of your question, which is how the writing process with the acoustic and electric. For me, with the acoustic and electric are kind of they're different energies of the same thing. You know what I mean? Whenever I write for an acoustic song or a song that I feel like, first, let me put it this way: the best songs that a person can have on their record are songs that can be played electric and acoustic. And that was something that I think Max Martin epitomized in an interview one time when he said, he says like he when you can, maybe it wasn't Max Martin, maybe it was, I'm thinking of someone here. It wasn't Max Martin. It was Lou Pearlman. Pearlman, yeah, Lou Pearlman from the manager of brought Britney Spears and all those guys. He had said it best, I think, when he said that the best songs were the ones that you could play electric and acoustic. So I
Exactly.
always, whenever I go into writing for an acoustic song, it's very similar to the electric sound. However, the electric sound, it leaves more interpretation for riffs and things like that. I can't. To riff on an acoustic guitar and try to sing a song to you isn't going to make any sense. If I'm just playing this one little, it's not going to make sense, right? So, strumming versus riffing, I think, is the big difference. But I try to incorporate, at least with chords, that they can be translated to one another. So
Yes.
like a song like "My Love Remains," for instance, on my record, that song is easily translatable into the acoustic. Whereas a song like "Boys from the Puget Sound" is going to be a little bit harder because it's obviously driven by this sonic thing that has to encompass the electric sound. So that's typically how I look at things when it comes to writing. And then I forget what was the second half of your question.
Yes, it's how do you get the inspiration when you pick the guitar, you took the guitar.
Yeah. So for me, it's the inspiration comes. I always have a groove going in my head, man. I'm always like talking to myself around the house. I'm sure I freak my kids out, my wife sometimes. They probably think I'm schizo, but I walk around the house talking to myself and like thinking up grooves and beats all the time. I think that's where it really starts. It's just in my mind. And then if something really is driving me enough, or like there's a line that I hear in my head enough, I just go and I figure out a way to express it through writing, and so like like when I wrote "Take Me Away," for instance. I mean that I had the groove before I had the words,
Okay.
but the song itself was so hard. It was so in your face, and I was like, if you're gonna tell a story, just give that first line needed to be something that really expressed the feeling of the music. It wasn't so much that I was like, I just have this lyric and the music goes to. It's like, no, the music says this. So for me to come in and say something soft to you, like maybe my mom wasn't around, but I'm okay. That's not gonna do anything for you. That's not gonna move you. How is that? Those two things don't match. But I said, "Damn, my fucking mom abandoned me, man." Like that matches the aggression of the song. So whenever I'm writing, I'm always thinking about the energy of what I'm trying to capture. And luckily for myself, being a composer and a writer and all those things, like I'm able to kind of bring those worlds together and hopefully translates into good music.
Absolutely. Uh, let's talk about the way you sing. There is like a rage, the way you sing. Is that a way for you to externalize your emotions?
I think 100%. I think when you meet me as a person, I'm probably more subdued than people think I am. I'm really goofy. I mean, if you heard me on the stage and you heard this like ragey sound coming out of this kid, you'd think that person probably carried issues all the time. But I'm actually really happy. I'm really goofy. I'm silly, man. I'm nerdy. I play chess and ultimate frisbee. Like,
Oh,
you know what I'm saying? So, I think for me, the stage has always been that place where I can express myself. And not just from a soulful place, but blues always spoke to me as a kid because of it. It felt like it just matched my story. Like I had the blues because I just the love that I was searching for in these parents that I never had. Like that for me was the blues. It's like that's hard times. And for me, like those hard times were always expressed through the blues, and I think that's where that emotional expression comes from. It's like, that's the place you put that. When you listen to old school blues music, Robert Johnson, you listen to cats like Muddy Waters, that's what it was about. I mean, especially Howlin' Wolf. That's one of my favorite singers, man. Howlin' Wolf was just amazing. But that's where that inspiration comes from. That's how you sing it. You sing it like it means something to you, like it's the only thing. You know.
Let's talk about some songs of the album. I
Yep.
selected two songs that I want to talk about.
Yeah.
The first one is you just talked about it a few seconds. It was My Love Remains.
Yeah.
It's an emotional song, very beautiful with a powerful guitar solo at the end. Tell us what about the songwriting of this song. It's very powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's so my love remains. I was just talking about this. How about how it is for me, like not having that love in my life. I think that the maternal and paternal love in my life really it created this place. Like I'm a person that has a lot of love to give, but in some ways I don't have a place to give it. Because that kind of love is only meant for certain kinds of people. And so when those people don't exist in your life, you know, then that the need to express those feelings kind of finds different ways out, and it isn't always the healthiest. So my love remains really is about that internalized love, that love that I always had stored away for those people that were meant, that those maternal and paternal people that it was meant for, but really not having a place for to put that. How like there's always that void.
And about the music, it begins with acoustic and then more electric. How the idea came to begin with acoustic and then with guitars, with a
Yeah,
great solo guitar.
the idea was because that my love remains was really born playing in these bars and clubs, and when I first was getting started to make a living, man, I've been without a regular job now for almost 10 years, So when I first started, it was whatever I could get, cafes and coffee shops, whatever bar would have me just let me play. So I had to on one end on the weekends I'm playing these 3 4 hour shows with my band, and then during the weekday, I'm playing acoustic shows here, 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 and here. So for me, my love remains really. It was important for me to capture every angle of that song. So that people got an idea of where I was coming from. The legacy of music that I was bringing to the table from my story. But also like the composition, man. I mean that was something for me that was so important about that song, the composition, having the Leslie guitar. I mean, I told somebody this recently, like that song, and often a lot of the songs in the record, but that song in particular, it's almost like having 6 or 7 songs at one time.
Hmm.
You have guitars, doing different things at every given time of that song, and it's going to take a few listens, I think, for the listener to grab that when they really hear it. But there's so many layers, and there's so many stories being told at the same time. So I thought that's why I thought it was so important to capture that acoustic element and the electric element.
It's a great song, really great. I love a lot that song.
Thank you.
Spinning Circles. Just
Yeah,
before we talk about Soundgarden, about Seattle, about that period, this song sounds really grunge, of course. We know that you learned to play violin when you were young.
yeah, yep.
At the beginning of the song, there's some parts, the violin parts. Did you play that?
I did not play that. No, that was my friend Andrew Joslin, who's done some composition work for other artists around the industry. Man, he is a really great composer, and I hit him up and I said I gotta have strings in this, man, because I felt that way. You know what I mean? And not just to give a nod to my history as a classical musician, in my origins, but also because I know how important it is to make sure that there is a string element to your music, and because of the history of that kind of sound, and so I thought it was important if I was going to stamp a song and try to create something timeless, I was going to do it with the authenticity of an actual string orchestration rather than trying to recreate it somehow artificially.
And tell us more about that song, except the violin that we just talked about. But the sound is really grunge. So tell us more about that song.
Yeah, so I wrote that song with Dave Bassett in LA towards the end of last year, and that song, I mean, like, I was inspired. I just done a cover of Down in a Hole with Duff McKagan for the Alice in Chains
Yes.
Founders Awards, and diving into that song, I realized how cool it was that it kind of is switched from this kind of major minor thing, like on one part of the song it's got this major element, and then at the chorus or something it switches to a minor thing. I haven't dug into it in a while, but like I remember just thinking to myself like that's crazy that the and another song that I think about that does that is While My Guitar Gently Weeps by the Beatles. It's another song where the song starts out in a minor key and then it goes into the major key of itself, right? I think it's like A or B or something like that. And it goes to, you got the verse in B minor, but the chorus comes in and it's in, I don't know why somebody told you. It's like this really major progression of itself. And so when you put the whole song together, it just blew my mind. And I think that kind of was the inspiration for Spinning Circles was like, I wanted to, as I'm displaying myself or as I'm, introducing myself as an artist, I think it's important to show the depth of my mind, and I thought that it was so important to capture that and to show that I'm not just, this four chord rock guy. You know what I mean? Like there's a little bit more depth there. There's a little more music understanding, I think. And but also, when I was writing with Dave, um, you know, as I'm telling him like, yeah, like I want to epitomize the Seattle sound. I mean, we both came up with this really cool part of the chorus, which really reminds people of Heart Shaped Box.
Yes.
Which is I thought was interesting because I wasn't really thinking about Heart Shaped Box, but I was thinking about that, which is actually so. Here's the most interesting part about that is like I wasn't thinking about Heart Shaped Box, but Heart Shaped Box I think was inspired by this riff that these guys always had as a lick, down, 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 da, 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 hey, like that was like the tone, and I was like, okay. So Dave came up with the idea of throwing that falsetto over there and just reminding people with that bend, of that time period. So I thought that was pretty cool. It's one of my favorite songs, man. I feel like it's one of my more accomplished songs on the record, and I kind of think it shows more depth, I think, than people really know of me so far.
Absolutely, it's a great song. So let's talk about some touring. We know that you will play some shows in June and September in the USA. Is there any chance to have you here in Europe and, of course, in France?
Yes, I think there's some conversations going on right now about getting a European trip going. There's nothing locked in, so I can't make any promises on that. But I guess it kind of depends on how the pandemic plays out for our countries. But I think that is definitely one of the top conversations we're having right now is how to bring Ayron Jones to Europe and kind of showcase all the music.
We hope to see you very soon here in Europe, of
Yeah, me
course.
too. That would be
Thank you
cool,
very
man.
much, Aaron, for all this information about the new album, Child of the State. We hope you the best. We love a lot that album, really great album. So thank you very
Thank you
much
so
for
much,
your
man.
music.
Thank you, man. It's really good talking with you.
Thank you. Bye
All
bye.
right. Bye bye.